So the last 24 hours in Minnesota have been a complete tragedy with this shooting. And I hope that Tim Walz is held responsible for all the hate rhetoric that he has been pushing for weeks, if not months, if not years. So on Vance Luther Bolter, we see him here in the inset. A 57-year-old former appointee of Governor Tim Walz allegedly impersonating a police officer carried out targeted attacks on Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota. Around 2 a.m., he shot State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette in Champlain, leaving them critically injured but stable, then fatally shot State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark in Brooklyn Park an hour later. A target list naming Democrats, including Walz himself, was found, with no Kings flyers suggesting a political motive. Governor Walz condemned the attacks as a politically motivated assassination. But what is the problem? What is the actual problem here? We're going to see some of the things that, well, are really disturbing. First, that Hortman was really concerned after voting to repeal health care benefits for illegal immigrants. So, she was aware that it would upset her base. Now, she and her husband have been tragically killed in what Governor Walz is calling a targeted attack. So this was her talking about that vote.
What I worry about is the people who will lose their health insurance. I know that people will be hurt by that vote, and I'm.
You notice that her voice is cracking as she says this. It's obvious that it was very difficult for her, and she knew that it was going to have some kind of consequences, but not these consequences.
We worked very hard to try to get a budget deal that wouldn't include that provision. And we tried any other way we could to come to a budget agreement with Republicans, and they wouldn't have it.
So what we have now is that she was shot dead by this suspect. The suspect who killed Representative Melissa Hortman has been identified. Bolter was a Tim Walz appointee to one of the governor's boards. So Tim Walz is already connected to this in one way. We see here the notice of appointment of Vance Bolter, in which, by the way, I found it really concerning that he was not only in full police officer attire with everything, with all the things on top of him, but he was driving an actual SUV with the police lights and all and everything. And you remember those words, by the way, you remember those words of Tim Walz: "I've become friends with school shooters." And I noticed that some of you have don't remember this or have never heard this, but here goes. This is an actual footage.
I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time.
Yeah, it was in the vice presidential debate when he said literal words: "I become friends with school shooters,"
I've become friends with school shooters.
As if it was no big deal. And also, in the car of the suspect, where there's no Kings flyers, there's a protest that was going to be was organized for these days, and we have this that Tim Walz was going to be one of the speakers on that same event. How convenient. The timing couldn't be, but you could say, well, all this are just circumstantial. It's not something that actually ties him. But then this the rhetoric. Oh, hey, here is Governor Tim Walz, who 2 weeks ago, telling Democrats they needed to get meaner. Then a guy he appointed with the No Kings flyers shot 2 Minnesota lawmakers. We need to get meaner. So how does this work?
Called out on this because I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. It's because he is. Oh. The governor's being mean, and the governor's speaking out on that. Well, maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner. Maybe it's time for us to be a little more fierce. Because we have to ferociously push back on this.
ferociously push back on this.
And again, I'll speak to my teacher colleagues in here. The thing that bothers a teacher more than anything is to watch a bully, to watch this bully and to stop it. And when it's a child, you talk to them and you tell them why bullying's wrong. But when it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the shit out of him back. You push back. You make sure they know it's not there.
So also, just a couple of weeks ago, Tim Walz gave a graduation speech. Walz told attendees that they had to fear for their lives because of Trump and ICE. What did he think was going to happen if someone took his words seriously?
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense, not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye. Just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into those vans, and disappeared. To be clear, there's no way for us to know whether they were actually criminals or not. It's not hyperbole to say we're not far from a world where anyone could get that knock at a door. And there's no guarantee you'd get your day in court or that you'd ever make it home alive from whatever corner of the world they stick you in. Now, if Trump and his folks want to come for Minnesotans, we need to make sure that there's a firewall that they have to come through before they get to.
Again, there's the pushback. We need to have that pushback. If they come for our illegals, they will find out. Also, thanks Mace Moore, by the way, for this videos. Just 2 days, Tim Walz refused to apologize for comparing ICE to the Nazi Gestapo. I think it's okay to bully the bully at times.
Will you apologize for what you said about ICE, comparing them to
Gestapo? To
Gestapo?
Identify who they are when they operate, to not use unmarked.
Okay. Are you calling for ICE agents to be brought to a tribunal under the threat of death by comparing them to the Gestapo?
Everyone is afforded due process.
Is bullying okay?
Is bullying okay? As teacher,
is bullying okay? Yes or no? Is it okay to bully somebody?
I think
yes
there's
or
a
no?
time to push back at a bully. So yes, I do think there's a time.
So you think it's okay to bully others?
I think it's okay to bully the bully at times.
Well, you're showing that the Democrat Party is a party of violence.
Well, that indeed is a thing. The Democrat Party has shown to be a party of violence. And if Tim Walz keeps at this, well, these are going to be the consequences. This is the press conference that Walz gave for this tragic events. And, well, I'm going to have 2 questions about this.
We're here today because an unspeakable tragedy has unfolded in Minnesota. My good friend and colleague, Speaker Melissa Hortman, and her husband, Mark, were shot and killed early this morning in what appears to be a politically motivated assassination.
Appears to be a politically motivated assassination. I think that by this point, he was not aware that the suspect was somebody appointed by himself. And one thing that is even more strange is that the suspect's wife also worked for Tim Walz. So yeah, this is unfolding. I have updates right here on my right about this case. This is right before our eyes unfolding. So let's continue.
Our state lost a great leader, and I lost a dearest of friends. Speaker Hortman was someone who served the people of Minnesota with grace, compassion, humor, and a sense of service. She was a formidable public servant, a fixture and a giant in Minnesota. She woke up every day determined to make this state a better place. She is irreplaceable, and we've been missed by so many. Minnesota's thoughts and prayers are with her family, her loved ones, her children, and her parents.
Again, what do you think is going to happen if you steer the pot, if you steer that kind of speech, if you steer, we have to push back against anybody who is against our base or what we stand for, is trying to deport illegals. In this case, who got shot was somebody who just voted against healthcare for illegals. We can guess that was part of the motivation. It's only a guess, but you tell me what would be the motivation for that.
My prayers also go out to State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, who were each shot multiple times. The Hoffmans are out of surgery at this time and receiving care, and we are cautiously optimistic they will survive this assassination attempt. This was an act of targeted political violence. Peaceful discourse is the foundation of our democracy.
Peaceful discourse. Do you think that Walz has engaged in peaceful discourse? That's one of my questions. It's incredible that he has the gall to, in that press conference, talk about peaceful discourse. You have to be a real hypocrite to talk about peaceful discourse after this happened. And he could have just skipped that.
Peaceful discourse is the foundation of our democracy. We don't settle our differences with violence or at gunpoint. In the state of Minnesota, and as recently as last week, in the most closely divided state legislature in the country, we sat down, we worked things out, we debated, we shook hands and compromised, and we served the state of Minnesota together. We proved that it's possible, even in these politically charged times, to find compromise and adhere to the principles of democracy and civil discourse. We must all, Minnesota and across the country, stand against all forms of political violence. At this precipice moment we're on, this tragic act here in Minnesota should serve as a reminder to all of us. The democracy and the debates in the halls of Congress, in state houses, in school boards, is a way to settle our differences peacefully and move society to a better place.
Okay, see, he says that, okay, we need to settle our differences peacefully. You saw the previous clips. Do you think that that is being peaceful about your arguments? You think that that is, okay, let's be reasonable here. Let's talk about as adults here. And he keeps talking about bullying. He keeps talking about bullying.
We're collaborating with all local, state, and federal agencies on a full investigation. We're committed to keeping Minnesotans informed as the situation continues. I assure you that those responsible for this will be held accountable. And each and every one of us are committed to making sure that a tragedy like this never repeats itself in Minnesota or across this country. I'd now like to turn it over to my public safety team to fill you in on the specifics of this ongoing investigation.
Okay, the thing that I found the most concerning is that the suspect had access to a full police uniform, an SUV that looked like a police car with lights and a police SUV with lights and everything. And my question is, so many are saying that the guy was the CEO or something of a security company. Oh, so he must have had access to that. I don't think that is legal, that even if you are involved in security, you would have access to police officer uniforms. That should be, that must be illegal.
Yes, the question is what kind of vehicle, how were they dressed? They did drive a vehicle that looked exactly like an SUV squad car. It was equipped with lights, emergency lights that looked exactly like a police vehicle. And yes, they were wearing a vest with taser, other equipment that would, a badge very similar to mine, that no question if they were in this room, you would assume that they are a police officer.
Yeah, that is one of the questions that we have. Also, because you know that Walz can't sink any lower, but he actually can sink lower. Tim Walz says he hopes storms crash the Army's 250th birthday parade in D.C. tomorrow. How can you be so un-American, anti-American? This guy is a CCP plant. This is just a CCP plant.
I'm just going to say it as someone who, proud of military service, understands the importance of it, but understands they serve us. And whenever I come out here, I take great joy in running my mall route and down around the monuments or whatever, and it was horrific down there today. I'm just going to tell you, it just looks wrong, feels wrong. And so I think I'm going to go be with a few thousand folks who kind of have the tradition that there is a separation there, that we don't need this, and this is not Pyongyang on a Saturday. So I'm just going to confess too, and might get me in trouble, whatever. I have never so hoped for rain in my life. So, there you go. So,
yeah. Yeah, he jokes about that. He jokes about that. Okay, what a great American. In a matter of just weeks, not one, but two, Tim Walz officials have committed acts of political terror. First, you had a Walz employee vandalizing Teslas over mosque. Now you have a Walz appointee assassinating politicians. The Department of Justice should launch an investigation into Walz and his government. And the last minute thing that I was just finding out is that this was from Benny Johnson. The suspected Minnesota shooter appointed by Tim Walz went from general manager at a 7-Eleven to CEO of an international NGO called Red Lion Group in Congo. There's almost no public info on the NGO except that it reportedly ran out of funding. Was this USAID funded? Big questions. We have so many questions here. This is still unfolding. We are waiting for more information, and until then, I want to refer you to